Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first virtual Neon Pajamas reading marathon. I reached out to dozens of my favorite writers and asked them to send any kind of video they liked, as long as it was under 10 minutes and as long as it featured their own words. This resulted in 31 readers sending over nearly 3 hours of multimedia poetics. We have stop motion collage, 2D animation, X-ray filters, fish bones, vintage movie scenes, and much more. If you like what you hear and see today, please directly support these writers by checking out their books and their online publications and their future readings. It's also beautiful, as you can see from this messy assemblage, this flimsy stack. During the reading as well as in the future, we encourage you to donate to our nonprofit of choice, No Name Book Club, linked in the description, where proceeds go towards sending books to incarcerated individuals through their prison program initiative. You can find more at nonamebooks.com, or you can make a one-time donation to info@nonamebooks.com via PayPal. Without further ado, let's begin this marathon. Thanks for tuning in and being part of the parade.
Okay, hello, my name's Sparrow. I'm going to read some poems and then I'm going to sing a song, maybe 2 songs. I'm not entirely sure what to read, but I have these piles of my poems. I think I'll start with this poem in French. It's Une confession. Je mange des pêches en conserve, trop rapidement. That means confession. I eat canned peaches too fast. And I'll read this next French poem. Une demande. Aidez-moi à hisser ce drapeau de pirate, s'il vous plaît. A request. Help me hoist this pirate flag, please. Okay, moving on to this is an interesting poem. It's called My Day Job. So, dusk is what happens, twilight is dusk. After the day, before the sun sets is dusk. This is called My Day Job. I quit my day job and my night job, but not my dusk job. Okay, I'll read this one. It's called 1601 Pennsylvania Avenue. The President's Tool Shed. I'll read this because I live right across from the Esopus River. It's called Why I Am a Poet. I threw all my poems in the river, and 2 weeks later received my wet manuscript in the mail with a note. Sparrow, I found your poems in the Esopus. You must have dropped them. Signed, a friend. That's why I'm still a poet. I'm going to read this poem. It's called Spiritual Truth. God is constantly clicking like in the Facebook page of your life. This is called Business Plan. My new podcast consists of me reading this poem 300 times. I'll read this. It's a strange poem. I'm not sure if it's true. It's called Poet, but poet in quotes. You picture the quotes. Poet. Today I learned that poet derives from the Sanskrit sinati. He gathers, heaps up. This is called Overheard on the Subway. It's easy to love God. What's hard is loving the Mets. And now I'm going to end with a song. This is called My Trust Fund Harpoon. With my trust fund, I bought a harpoon. With my trust fund, I purchased a harpoon. My trust fund harpoon is long and strong. It's thick and quick. It's wide with pride. It's fast as a speedometer, tall as a thermometer, broad as a barometer, jaunty as a geometer. Fly, harpoon, Fly through the sky, flee through the sea, flare through the air, flutter through the water, aspire through the fire, sail towards a whale.
If you feel terrible, try to remember a time you really worried about cannibalism. If you can, I'm sorry. That makes me feel terrible. If you feel terrible, do not lie down. Go outside, do something good for the world. But remember that doing good things can sometimes be terrible. If you feel terrible, stay up and watch a news story about a man who kills a woman in a cheap hotel. And imagine how terrible he must feel when he tries to stuff her under the bed but can't because there's already a dead woman under there. When I feel terrible, I try to joke about it. My dad has a joke where he tells the hostess his name is Mr. Pity and that he'll be dining alone, then sulks through the laughter when she calls out, "Pity, party of one." If you feel terrible, it helps to imagine bad things happening to other people. After I got hit by a car, I spent days in bed moaning, "Oh, this is the most terrible thing that could happen to somebody." When my friend Frances feels terrible, she looks through a book of tortured war prisoners. When she showed it to me, I felt even more terrible, but she had a point, so I changed my complaint to, "This is the most terrible thing that can happen to me." Try being selfish if you feel terrible. Better yet, try to feel as terrible as you possibly can. If you feel terrible and love feeling terrible, you could be the most terrible feeling person in the world. If you are, I will think of you often. I will imagine terrible feelings contorting out of me and into you. And if that makes you feel better, feel worse.
The playground is alive. During recess, we would fight all the time. We understood the playground was alive and we were hurting it. I clawed at you. You punched at her. She kicked at me. We bled in the field, on the blacktop, and wood chips. During class, I watched the other recess. The kids played peacefully, ignoring one another, everyone by themselves. I tried to will fights to break out. The peace was boring. Class was boring. She and you just slept in the back of the room, and I sometimes managed to fall asleep too. At the end of the school day, we went home. Alone in our rooms, scattered across town, we invented rules to more fighting games. Sometimes we snuck out to fight in moonlight. The three of us fighting and screaming and laughing as the occasional car drove by, lights blinding and then disappearing again. And if a driver stopped to yell at us, we'd chase them down, cawing until they left. And at the end of the night, our bloodied knuckles gleaming, voices hoarse from screaming, we'd put our heads together and wrap arms around each other's backs and jump and spin, chanting all our names 3 times. You sometimes got soft and told us you loved us. Then she or I would punch you down. Of course we did. But you can't say that. It kills it. Like now. Now you're flat on the blacktop with your head leaking blood out. Wake up. It was only a game, and we should play again. Wake up! She kicks your head, but you don't move at all. I pinch your nose shut and cover your mouth so you can't breathe, but why don't you react? There's an earthquake. The playground opens up, and you and I fall into a shallow crack. She stands a few feet above us, looking down, bracing to keep her balance as the world churns. It makes me nauseous. It doesn't stop.
You want that fish over your face?
Well, fish carcass. Fish carcass. Say hello to pork rind and arboreal rice, while caraway puree returns home to deconstruct wilted carrot from its butter and herb remnant. Fish carcass says goodbye to a night fight between under-marinated onion slice and wasted red boar kale amidst a gun battle between grilled salmon and paprika. Fish carcass say goodnight to electrolytes and magnesium like a chemical imbalance takes place inside the borderline cod meat. Fish carcass say good morning to anti-griddle and orange liquor whose preconditional love for salt and bitterness, reminiscence of caviar and pancetta vinaigrette has put quail eggs under the cloak. Fish carcass say midday to emu eggs while the sun throws inside a decadent basket of fish sauce without making the plastic mattress walk-in refrigerator and bacon sauvignon fuel left out. Fish carcass say cloud nine, say achiness, say shell-shocked, say cortisone, say angelo, say Italian meringue, say calf liver, say Republic of Georgia, say lavash, say turnpike turnips, say succotash, say yuca marmalade, say overcooked quail, say chief Taya Evans, say fish head, say into a barrel, say bacon fat, say baby corn, say favor profile, say with victory, say the gods are with me, say no guts to no glory, say did not materialize, say story on a plate. The end.
This one goes out to the one I love. I recognized your arm in the photo, one of many, holding up a fish. That weekend you said you were hunting for the red October, which seemed highly unlikely to me. When a great idea came, I wrote it on a napkin. We were going to go to Iceland together. A 3-hour tour. Come down here and say that. Establishing shot. They spent all the money on a matte painting. The group therapist and his mustache. Your roommate rented a hot air balloon and didn't come back. Fat raindrops on the ballpark seats. I was tired and mad I am not better at skiing. Nate, it was really nothing. If I was more intrepid, less influenced by cavemen. My friend swears by drinking beer in the shower. Commercials for calling cards. The Friday drive time anthem came in a dream. A volley of arrows over the courthouse. That's that. Then the wind changed. Mary, I'm sorry I didn't take your lamp with me. A paper plane arrived via answering machine. It parked at the apron and didn't budge all winter. Disaster movies offer comfort I can't explain without appearing. Humanities professors come back to town with new bird tattoos. There's a busyness to your meteorology. I mean business. I mean charts, graphs, and a hand pointer. I mean morning cup of coffee. How's your house? Dreams of woodworking. This table isn't the best, but it's okay, I say to someone who's paid lots of clams. A veteran's cough immortalized in wax. I hear it 55 years later in another country. Being offered wild boar was not what my beloved or I expected on St. Valentine's Day. The people who wanted it, they didn't show up. That's that.
Hi, this is Jose Hernandez Diaz. Shout out to Ben for the invite. Today I'm going to read some work from my forthcoming collection, Bad Mexican, Bad American, which will be published in early 2024 with Acre Books. The first prose poem I'm going to read is called The Conformist, and it was published in 6th Finch. The Conformist. A man in a Neil Young and Crazy Horse shirt drank coffee at 4 a.m. because there was nothing else to do. He looked out the window. A pair of Doberman pinschers walked by in the moonlight. The man remembered his own Doberman pinscher from childhood. In retrospect, the dog was far too big and strong for a child. Sweet memories. The man finished his coffee and went to the gym. He walked on the treadmill for an hour, even though it bored him immensely. The man in the Neil Young and Crazy Horse shirt was becoming more mature in life. Finally, he was getting better at doing things he didn't really like. When he finished at the gym, the man went home and watched American football and ate a turkey sandwich. He was conforming very well to society. He was living the dream. This next prose poem is called The Stranger, and it was published in the Yale Review. The Stranger. A man came up to me as I was walking home from the pharmacy. Are you Jose Hernandez Diaz? Yes, I said. Who's asking? Do you enjoy sipping tea before bedtime? Well, I do, but what is it to you? I asked. In the 9th grade, did you get cut from the basketball team? I did, in fact, get cut from the team. Do you sometimes wonder what life would have been like had you married Margot Cisneros? Maybe sometimes, yes, I said. Are you afraid of small talk and long walks in the city? I'm just a little introverted, I said. Does the night sky resemble the dragon of your dreams? Yes, thank you for asking, I said. Did you cry when Muncie hit that home run in the World Series? I did cry at that moment, proud of it. Were you born and raised back and forth from Los Angeles to Orange County? Story of my life, yes, I said. Does the night sky resemble a dragon of your dreams? Yes, thank you for asking. Yes. And this last one I'm going to read was published in Conduit magazine, and it is called Voice. A man in a Carlos Santana shirt looked for his voice beneath the pile of crisp autumn leaves. Nothing. He looked for his voice at an underground rooster fight. Nothing. The man in the Carlos Santana shirt picked up a bulldog puppy and looked for his voice inside the dog's mouth. Nothing. Finally, the man in the Carlos Santana shirt saw a used black guitar in a thrift store window. He purchased the guitar with his last few dollars. The man tuned the guitar and began to play a bolero. His voice was there, as it turns out, inside of the guitar sound hole. It had been there all along. Thank you.
The ocean also. What is the matter of fact anyway? The matter of floodplains, calcite, desert bloom. the insistence of light in every shadow. How, when you wade into water, you get to thinking what breaks upon your body bends and flows around you, blameless, stays flowing through you too. Who says you're not the ocean also? We could walk each other home and say only what we sense. We bear what we can. The wind will do what it does. When the river breaks the banks, best to bless the waters freely.
Hey, my name is William Erickson, and this is 5 days, 5 prose poems. Huge thanks to Ben for inviting me to this marathon, and I'm stoked to see how it turns out. Coenzyme. A place of unbelievable simplicity rises up from the sea. The birds twit, the laws apply. All day Sunday, diners advertise their breakfast menu. Imagine holding any object, like the soldier holds the small white handkerchief, letting pity slip like sea ice to your stomach. But then the war is over, and all art retreats to the dim aesthetic reticule of Friday date nights. A child walks into the science exhibition with his father's fist-sized heart. The wings beat above the waves beat back. Curatorial experience. The mayor of a small town sweeps finches in piles before the street cleaner. He is an infamous whistler. No one's voted in years, but each election the applause is as big as a cattle ranch. Inside of a body sits a sound that frames out tiny windows, but what makes the view hinges on whether the soaking wet posters are stripped from the telephone poles. It's spring. Daffodils spill from the townsmen's canvas dresses, the air agglue with uncut keys. After hours and hours in line, the waiting itself becomes the spectacle. Wire Garden Gate. My happiness is deathly afraid of sinning and deathly afraid of prayer. It sits up all night, chalking tick marks on the blackboard, crossing out every group of 4 with a 5th diagonal line. What could one possibly know of the vanishment time assigns to every effort? On Sundays, we clap the chalk erasers and the neighborhood children do their skateboard tricks. Down the street, our dust clouds settle, blunting just a little the blood-red rhododendron blooms. I am not afraid of sin, but seeing art hanged on a wall is horrifying. Light-emitting diode. I met my joy on a highway overpass. Its flame was beating the steel rail into a lamp. I knew it was my joy, how a moth knows its night. Some people understand their joy as a blinding thing, a hat to hide the blood below. I have no memory of my own, but on a boat one day I fell asleep and it sounded like the creaking ice. And across it, a single hungry bear searched desperately in its own mouth for food. It couldn't tell its bare flesh from any other flesh, and its pawlessness was like the brightest flag waving a hot surrender to the speechless sun. Okay, last one. Drugstore makeup. Presumptuous joy, glue joy, blotting joy, soaking the open wound's translucent secret joy. Please, joy, take the shotgun seat. The trail's continuation predicts itself, and so we part the trees. Even without the wilderness, we move in wilderness, chimney joy, horsehair joy. I pull the drawstring from your sweatpants as one reaches for the ripcord. the farmer's hand blistered by the cancer of his occupation. Rilke, Nietzsche, my joy, we mustn't make our beds above the tree line. Thanks, y'all.
Mitzi, Let, and the butcher are each at one end of the table. Pepe is sitting across from Mano. The butcher passes a loaf of bread to Mano. Do you want me to slice it? Asks the butcher. No, thank you. I can slice it. Do you want a knife to slice it? Yes, thank you. I'll need a knife for that. Mitzi hands Mano a knife to slice the loaf. Mano slices the loaf. Do you want some butter? Asks Mitzi. Yes, please. The butcher passes the butter to Mano. Do you want me to butter it for you? No, thank you. I will butter it. Do you want the kind of knife needed to butter it? Yes, I'll need that kind of knife. Mitzi hands Mano a knife to butter the slice. Mano butters the slice. Mitzi uses her knife to cut her hand off. Would you like to eat my hand? No, I would not like that. I would not like to eat your hand, says Mano. The butcher pushes his knife into his mouth and cuts his tongue out. With his eyes, he asks Mano if Mano would want to eat his tongue. The butcher holds his tongue up. No, sir, I would not like to eat your tongue, but thank you. Mitzi looks sad that Mano does not want to eat her hand or the butcher's tongue. What more can we do for you than this? She asks. A black cloud spills out of Mitzi's wrist like ink underwater, and it spills out of the butcher's mouth too. Pepe doesn't notice. He's looking upward instead. Your parents. Mano pushes a whisper to Pepe in order to get Pepe's attention. What are parents? Pepe whispers back. Above them are the hooves of a herd of animals. Everyone watches the animals moving. Their hooves move in big circles. Mano asks Pepe, what kind of animal makes up the herd the hooves move in? But Pepe doesn't know what kind of animal makes up the herd the hooves move in.
Thank you, Ben, for inviting me to read. I'll just read a few poems. I will kill your firstborn son, but only after I kill Liam Neeson. Put the confidence in the basket, your constellation into my casket. I have a bastard for the nests of all my enemies, and 600 anemones to eat the fingers I steal from the heavens. Put the confidence in the basket, an open flask of gasoline. I will devour the gardens of my neighbor and spit the seeds of her fruits into my soil. I will thrash any sparrow without a worm from my bastard. Oh, my bastard, kiss him in his basket. The heavens are burning. My fruits rise toward the flames. What a man needs. You know what a man needs. I think we can all guess what he needs. The power to see himself clearly, and the power to see his gods through the clouds, and see his demons in the crest. X-rays for eyes. He needs the surgery, and somebody to hold a pancake to his lips while his eyes are in bandages, and someone to change his soiled eye bandages, and to pay the medical bills, and somebody to clean the dangerous shards after he runs through a sliding door trying to get to the bathroom. But then after he heals and can start using his X-ray eyes, yes, he is going to give a lot of people cancer. Other than stopping him from that, you know what a man needs. He needs quiet, needs solitude. He likes to take care of himself. He likes to go into the woods to look at himself, naked in the mirror. He will give himself a lot of cancer. What a man can't have. A man can't have too much hair. A man can't have too much anything except wooden spoons. How many soups must you be stirring at the same time? But otherwise, order me extra of everything, especially pillows. How propped do I want to be? None of your fucking business, Sally. I will prop until I am dead, and then you won't know. Is he napping? He is so well propped. All I need is a light. Already my pyre is all around. So no, a man can't have too much hair. Hair is himself. How can a man have too much of himself? I want to be drowning in my own hair. I want doctors to be concerned. I want experimental drugs. An extra helping here, sir. I'll eat them until I'm invisible or walking through walls. My weakness is for kicking. My one weakness is for kicking. A man when he is down, yes, that is best. He is already near where the foot lives. Or if the usually down man is up, erectus, or backed by a chair, my weakness is for kicking over his leg or beanbag or whatever. Then once he is spilled onto the earth like a lump of organic fertilizer, a little more I kick him. Running a man down, I am totally into this too. It is not just a hobby to me. I keep a cellar of boots for every occasion. A man, oh, he cannot run forever. Pretty soon he will be looking at the ocean. Sure, I can kick him in the ocean if I am wearing the right outfit, sea booties and a wetsuit. Where is all this blood coming from? The sky is the obvious answer, where the second ocean lives. The twin sister who could levitate, she always brought birds to the potluck. Her dreams are a bit upside down. As a result, they are too honest, and she is flagellated. Honesty is also its own punishment, as is being a short man. Why is good shit up so high, Father? Because that is where it began.
Bridge was broke. I hurt myself on a nose crane during prime time the way the water worked in the ball pit. Was when you went too deep you would have an accident in the bottom part. Have you ever went in there, thought about big water like so big these birds will bite chimneys, ride the bird break and whistle all day, take the lake out at night before it rains and drown in it? Unfortunately, silly snakes float through the car in the water as it pours in like it is. Yellow, the car water, like the gut keys for pianos compartmentalize in ball, red, blue, and yellow. Kill me on a branch, I hear it all over. When I am looking around, when I am yelling, I hear the people bounce from earth to beneath, and it is sucked in on itself the way that we are. Caught in a good, sad circle, but there are no candles, so it is dark underneath this water. This rib stack is getting higher as the tire pops. What a bright sound it is, a pwasp. It is so peaceful under here. It is not, take a look around. Listen to the music. Water, cool dance to it. Look at those high blutes. By God, look at all the bubbles.
Bear with a chainsaw. I heard a big bell cling outside. I ran to my peephole. It was the church. I recognized the steeple and the cross. The big bell was swinging and ringing. I recognized the stained glass angel with its sword. The pastor grinned at me from the vestibule. I knew his mustache and his little cap. In the sanctuary window, somebody's shadowy torso crawled over the organ, keying out bright hymns. New hatchbacks crammed the parking lot. Blonde children played in the sandbox, bouncing colorful plastic buckets between their knees. Even the rhododendrons had come along for the ride, their heavy scent mixed with candles, fresh laundry, coffee, hymn books, and bleach, all the smells of church. When I opened my door, church poured into my kitchen with its dresses, piney colognes, politesse, jingling jewelry, and promises of a better life and afterlife. Out of everyone in the crowd, I only recognized the pastor. It had been too long. Old congregants had died, my parents included, and middle-aged congregants grew frail. The younger generation mostly didn't go to church anymore, what with the climate collapsing, mass incarceration, job insecurity, privatized healthcare putting each of us one serious illness away from bankruptcy, etc., etc. Why face the void on weekends, too? I guess that's why the church was so proactive, visiting my house instead. I'd been temporarily furloughed at work, so I wasn't hard to find. Pews scraped into my living room. Old ladies lowered themselves, grunting into their personal satin cushions. The pastor's wife plugged in a coffee maker on the kitchen counter next to a middle-aged guy with faded tattoos who was spreading peanut butter over crackers. On the ceiling, a weird pink cloud swirled past the chandelier. Light through the pink cloud turned our hands pinkish, gave off a sweet smell. The Holy Spirit said, a congregant pointing, "Look." After the opening hymn, "How Great Thou Art," the pastor took off his little cap. His baldness shone in the Holy Spirit's rosy light. I was sitting in a front pew, shoulder to shoulder with a grandfatherly gentleman who smelled of sour milk. "Apostasy," the pastor said, looking straight into my eyes. "What does it mean to you?" Cleared his throat. I sat up straighter. 2 teenage boys had sneaked into my bathroom, and I could hear them fumbling towards some kind of ecstasy. "I don't know," I said. Around me, the congregation murmured. The pastor said, "Apostasy is defined by Webster's dictionary as the abandonment or renunciation of a religious or political belief." "I'm not an apostate," I said. "It's just I've been very sick and I couldn't come to church, like physically." I was lying, of course. On Sundays, I watched woodworking videos on YouTube. I'd gotten rather skilled. I'd been carving a dead backyard tree into the shape of a bear holding a chainsaw. The bear reared on his hind legs and roared and yanked the pull chain. I would polish the chainsaw's blade while my rich neighbor leaned over the fence to watch me work. A few weeks back, he'd called me a rare talent and winked. "Would an unhealthy individual, sick as you are, be able to make a statue of a bear holding a chainsaw?" the pastor said. The Holy Spirit slithered around his temples, whispering in his ear. "Oh, the bear came with the house," I lied. The Lord hates the lying tongue, the pastor said. Me too, I said. Somebody passed me a peanut butter cracker. It tasted great, salty and creamy. You're a believer, the pastor said. You haven't forsaken the faith? No, not forsaken, no, I said. There's the Holy Spirit in my house? The pastor said, the Bible says we should attend church on Sunday, Hebrews 10:24, and let us continue how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. That did not say go to church every Sunday, I said. Then answer me this. What do you think the day, capital D in day, drawing near is? I'll give you a hint. It's bad news for sinners. The apocalypse, I guessed. Yep, it's the apocalypse, all right. We sang Come Now, Lord Jesus. Halfway through the song, the teen boys stumbled out of my bathroom, tucking their dress shirts into the waistbands of their dress slacks. We shouted amen and clapped politely. The pastor gave me his business card and said, come back when your heart is ready. I ran out to see the church off. I waved. The little cross atop the steeple bobbed wistfully over the hill. Apparently, the Holy Spirit really, really liked my chainsaw bear. The Holy Spirit circled the bear's head during the day, and at night the Holy Spirit snored in the shed. A year has passed since church came over. I traded the chainsaw bear to my neighbor for 2 gold bars worth $50,000. It's his idea, and I didn't argue. Can you believe my profit? Lucky because my job canned me. It's an El Nino summer, and we're breaking heat record after heat record. The sun looks old. Sparrows fall dead from the sky, and I rake them into lawn bags. The pastor was right about the end times. My rich neighbor sits in a camping chair drinking a protein shake next to his chainsaw bear and the Holy Spirit. They watch storms roll in off the ocean. What a threesome. Whenever I mow the yellowing lawn, my neighbor shouts and flashes me the thumbs up. I love my rich neighbor. I mean it. I love my neighbor as myself. I'm just so grateful. What I'm trying to say is, have you ever made $50,000 going to church? Not unless you're a pastor. Anyway, I'm glad the church visited. Sometimes you need to see a thing just one more time before you can let it go forever.
My name is Tyler Barton, and this is called Gutters. It is a sampler of some new poems I've been working on that are equal parts found poetry and collage.
The mountain would need to approve this process, tossed out of apartments, the whole springing out of logic. During the hearing too, long-term tenant. To speak the truth, tension, to keep you warm, greed. Housing for citizens was shrouded in what looked like fog from a fog machine, separated by miles of why and when.
Last July, my partner subscribed us to the local paper. I live in a population 5,000 town in the rural mountains of northern New York State, otherwise known as the Adirondacks. The fact that Saranac Lake, my home for the past 2 years, has a daily local paper at all is strange. Most places don't even have newspapers anymore, much less ones that publish daily, in print, and operate with a fair degree of autonomy. For the first time in my life, I started reading a daily newspaper. My parents never got one. I didn't even know how to hold it, much less navigate to page A14. The same month, our landlords, fresh back from their long winter in the Sunshine State, invited themselves over for a check-in, sat my partner down at the dining room table, which was also my office. I was at work, and told her they were going to move into the house where we were living. They owned it after all. On the way out, the landlords asked if she could borrow Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders, asked this with the book already in her hands, and 1 foot through the front door, her front door. Aaron came immediately to my work, and we spent the afternoon together panicking. It had been nearly impossible to find the place these people were asking us now to leave, so to be given mere 45-day notice was a major destabilization. Since we'd moved to the area in 2021 for work, the availability of apartments and houses had diminished even further. For the next few months, I didn't read much else other than the local paper. I saw my story reflected there. They were calling it the housing crisis. It was maybe the first time I felt granted political power by the introduction of a term, a phrase, the way language makes things real. I knew that this pinch I was feeling was not the blow or the wound felt by the unhoused and the evicted, because I saw voices in the newspaper telling exactly these stories both local and national. A page of newsprint is broken into columns. As I read, sometimes my eyes would drift from one column to the next because I'm used to reading books, not newspapers. One night I was reading the paper, and midway down the page my eyes jumped from one column to the adjacent one. But the words made a kind of sense, continued perfectly, grammatically, but more importantly, poetically, surprisingly. The line was, "The houses that the homes could never be." The line enchanted me. I showed it to my partner, Aaron, who taught me everything I know about found poetry. I said, "Have you ever seen something like this?" She coined the term gutter that night, yet again granting me permission to lend an idea my attention simply by giving that idea a name, and began collecting these tiny little half-interrupted bits of language from the paper, my gutters, and in the 8 months I've been collecting them, I now have 921. I don't know whether to be proud of that or not. My goal is to reach 1,000, though, and then I'll stop collecting, and then I will begin to arrange these poems into a manuscript. May, shall, must. They are bargaining years this spring. My property approved a language, a pretty piece of retail politics, hanging a left at the rugged crowd. You didn't need a house. It was a pure on the afternoon, a familiar room. You see how it affects the view? So this poem is about trying to buy a house, during this period of housing insecurity. We also thought we might solve our problem by buying our first house, even as the interest rates continued to climb all year long. We're making about $100,000 a year. We're in our 30s. We have 5 degrees between us and a not impressive but above average savings tucked away. We never even came close. Forms of feeling. A Google search. The classic sad. Always sad. Sad the brain. Sad the sun. Sad evidence. To treat sad be, in general terms, spring. In the morning light, tears. This piece is 22 housing programs. It has 22 lines. I'm not going to read the numbers. 22 housing programs begins and ends with an epigraph. It begins with, "The board is struggling to define who counts as a local under the law." 22 housing programs. Anybody who wants to create will be in the future. Others warn homes over. Family as rated by tidy yards. Apart more. Strug along. Override local and middle class workers. I am still. I would recommend sitting. I was just remembering swimming hazardous as minnows to Joe Biden's island. 2 sides taken literally. A local predominantly white now. In a white neighborhood I knew it would not be. His prayers were with, it's hard to say. Tuesday's public hearing was probably a huge mistake. Suburban boom, sticking point, that ring, wide-ranging, scapegoats, loopholes, lying, a mix of methods, Connecticut, places such as the Great Recession. Somewhere withers. Serious opposition to the housing projects. I really thought about the war from start to finish. Just for context with this poem, STR stands for short-term rental or an investment property. Otherwise, a house where someone could live but is rented out nightly to tourists. It appears in the first line of this poem. So, but the light was light installed. She created a bonfire of her work, though in later years a simple box cutter became a less dramatic and equally effective alternative. Henry Martin on Agnes Martin. She'll scrub 2-bedroom STRs, an annual total of just under enough. Non-touch with the lake, non-compliant, the goal has been elusive. Soft, found only in the stars. This last one's called Art Doors Woman. It is a little bit less about housing and more about the process of making these works. I feel like it represents a shifting understanding of my own identity as an artist as well as a person with a body. And I feel like this kind of serves as almost an honest artist bio of the last decade or so of my life. It kind of hits all those beats. So, Art Doors Woman. art process. A vote of trust, a certified secret, a bachelor's election, a master's court, a new family, years of fun, a member, a referendum, a member of the background. Oh, the housing. I was flabbergasted, ravaged, gingerly, was blamed, was dishonest, yes, $5,000 did not exist. Imposing or existing, full of candy and costumes of technology, give people a good deemed necessary. Thanks for checking this out, and if you want more from me, I'm on Instagram at Tyler Barton LOL. Yeah, that's right, Tyler Barton LOL on Instagram, and my website is tsbarton.com. Thanks again to Ben and everyone else involved in this for making it happen.
Hello, everyone watching this marathon reading that Ben has put together, and a huge thank you to Ben for inviting me to contribute to this. I am reading from a hotel room in Gothenburg in Sweden, where I am on holiday at the moment. Been travelling around a little bit, just been to Stockholm and been to Kalmar and Malmo as well. And this is our last stop, and I thought it might be nice to write a couple of pieces inspired by Sweden, home of ABBA and Bergman. So here are these little sketches of beginnings of pieces that I've written especially. Denim Bells. Agnetta's gold records were conversing at night, through the medium of her cat sweaters, through the medium of her polar capes and sapphire sequined berets, through the medium of her glacial blue eyeshadow. Agnetta's blonde, ice-white bangs were beginning to weigh heavily on her, just like her heart weighed heavily since she was never able to match, in her eyes, the greatness of Två små troll, her Two Little Trolls song written when she was just 5 years old. Her friend Frida was from the land of the trolls, from the land of the tiny Troblin, who would break into your house and throw parties at Christmas. Frida's cheekbones shimmered to eternity, and she would often get lost in her own Hokusai curls, lost on the plane of her own silicone smooth without actually being silicone skin, lost in her own snakeskin knee-length boots, lost in the drama of her own hits with ABBA, disappearing into the width of her own denim bell-bottoms. In the widest parts of her striped denim bells, she would sometimes find Benny and Bjorn relaxing in their silk kimonos. Agneta would join them, and they would all sip champagne, laughing and smiling like they did right after their 1974 Eurovision win in Brighton, smiling and laughing like they all did in the passage of time right after. In eternity, Agneta, Frida, Benny and Bjorn are always sipping champagne after their Eurovision win. In eternity, they have always just won forever. And this next one is called A Breakfast with Death, after the Seventh Seal mural on the wall of the breakfast room at the Rival Hotel, where we have just been staying, which is owned by Benny from ABBA. And Seventh Seal is a Bergman film, which you should definitely watch if you haven't seen it already. Breakfast with Death. Death barely touched his pancakes. No wonder so little meat on his bones, Stacey thought as she made her way up to the all-you-could-eat breakfast buffet for a 7th time. By now it was more of a waddle than a walk. Still, she kept going. Death was on to her and could tell she had been full for some time and was simply stalling. He was flattered by the attention, though, another one of Stacey's tactics. Tell me about the time you took this soul, Death. Ha ha, that's so funny, what did you do then, and so forth. Although Death knew Stacey was giving him the runaround, just having the opportunity to talk, to really talk, was therapeutic. His eyes were telling her, looking like cursed black marbles or hexed glazed slugs, she couldn't decide which. Still, Death wasn't stupid and headed her off at the revolving doors where she tried to make a run into the Stockholm night. I can't play chess, Stacey lied, not in the mood, and settled in for the long, uncomfortable, an ultimately unsatisfying journey. Thank you.
This is a poem called X-Ray. The bones wore gowns, filmy shadows of milk spilled and spread thin. We live, forgetting we're shredded, scraps of cloud caught on makeshift scaffolds.
The skies shat blood on the day the weather forecaster was fired. It's not my fault, she told her boss. You know this is all just based on chance. He said, too bad. Ratings went down 75%. Never mind the fact that they had been sleeping together for 4 months now. Never mind the way she had laid spread out like a stamped dried persimmon on his stupid huge desk. No one needed a desk this big. It was probably around 50 feet long. She loved him even more when he fired her, though she termed it hatred. It continued shedding blood for 40 days and 40 nights. The weather forecaster watched the skies glisten wet pink. I think I just saw God's eye, she said to no one. Of course she lived alone. The boss had a wife. But in that moment, she was just happy that her forecast had been correct. God's eye was drenched in muck collected from the street. She went outside to lick it as one would rub a lamp for luck. God's eye fluttered for a second, then closed forever. The radical feminists claimed this to be their new holy day. Blood was holy because of vaginal pubic hair. They were full of shit too. When people smeared blood over their doors in the Bible, it was for protection, and he spared those who were willing to hurt themselves for him. God is a fucked up sadist in that way. The weather forecaster kicked around God's eye like a soccer ball, feeling very irreverent. She imagined it as Big Boss. She wore her old suit that she used to wear on TV. That's when she saw Big Boss emerge behind God's eye. Hey, he said, I still think about you sometimes. The weather forecaster raised her hands and all the shit and blood stopped running from the heavens for a moment. He looked at her and smiled. Then she brought her hands down and all the shit, blood, and eye gunk from God's rolling eye pelted his body. She dragged him around through the streets like a trophy for a bit, or a teddy bear from childhood.
Hello. So I am going to read some selections from the Book of Smaller, which came out in 2022 with the University of Calgary Press. It's perhaps boring to do a straight reading, but that is what I'm going to do, because that is what I'm capable of. Okay, so these are all prose poems, and now I'm going to read them. Beware the failure of imagination. Civilization is neither prose. How long is a yardstick? Berate the invention of silt, the edge of a sudden season. Sentences are no longer in fashion. All images are clustered. Jesus was never your co-pilot. When you scan the sky, what have you? Once upon a time is deliberately evasive. Ants are the only creatures fulfilling exactness. Is this not a country? We are never at rest. My daughter is in New York City. I awake myself to sentences, a way of remembering. Outside, 11 degrees below zero. A dusty carcass of snow sweeps icy driveway. My daughter is in New York City, celebrating. The baby is asleep. The poem is a distance between early morning rustlings. The toddler cat. This is the last day of the year. Reading Ed Dorn in Vancouver. From the Santa Fe River to Vancouver Harbor, January rain is plentiful, omnipresent, dull. Two bodies lounge in a hotel's outdoor pool. If there is any good for mankind as a whole, I'm just not sure. A sound is fading. Photographs taken, gathered. Coffee notes on SFU stationery. In this sparseness, I can tell you, the peak of Grouse Mountain is 4,039 feet, which is 1,231 meters. The water and the shoreline serve me for a reason, and I them. As a country, we should never lose our interest in revolution. We tie this too to reconciliation. The landscape is a variation accompanying cloud. 47th birthday. Your grammar is hostile, legion, for I contain this petrified forest. My organs harden, fossilized. What am I acquainted with? The angle of compass points, arteries, old photos, the root bed of inquiry, days and nights and spelling, hand-stitched, history, a blanket of dead metaphor, stumbles over the brim. We are so close to midnight, all my years hold their breath. My 1980. A flatness of tongue, the heart enters mythology, memories sparrow, the way a thought might give birth. Through my bedroom window, silence, cicadas, cows crunching grass, the full moon. From the distance, cool melodies of highway, a passenger train. I imagine, sometimes in stories, a father eats his children, and other times a mother, sometimes a witch, sometimes none of the above. What happens then? 50 words for Gwendolyn. Birthday, don't worry, I know. We imagine the stethoscope, entangled, fences white, fleeting, full fathom, cardboard, I forgot why I did. Can a body renew? Always. They use the same photo. Chapter 2, dutiful, one word, a letter, manhandled, mansplained, conditions, what the bow breaks, championed, boys, boys, boys. The president's house is empty. Corollary endured a whitewash, literally, a golem's chance, not just him, though you've marked, resist is neither obsolete, we will not fall, an empty chamber, fueled, all strapped, collective impulse, falsehood, airbrushed, pitch, convulsed, an east wind furthers, contradicts, this area distorts, an oval rounds out, shimmers, misshapes, bends, such will, 100,000 hopes, subject to fail. The Book of Smaller. Say listen. Sorry. The Book of Smaller. Say less. Listen. Right. Incremental. I don't know how to write. Other templates emerge. My faith is insurance, a pat on the shoulder. Again, our skunk winters. Beneath forgotten hills, salted, indenting the crawl space. A backstep of litter strewn. There are exceptions. The bird feeder seeds, such vilification. Those bastard squirrels, desperate material evidence. Limits. Half your share. How to convince anyone. I want to know how it is you are keeping. Anne Carson, Short Talks. A dream inscribed with anecdote itself. Look homeward, squirrel, surveys our pitiful garden. A red-winged blackbird. A perfect morning swoons the pelting heat. Patterns fade and dust. There is no rain in this country. Dismantled trucks and shovels, beyond description. Heroic, our two girls in their bathing suits. An old notebook we write in. Such rainbow effect. We are not waterproof. Sprinklers concede to the light. Sentences my mother used. What should we have for dinner? What do you want for your birthday? What is your sister doing? Can you get me my pills? Is there anyone in the bathroom? Can you come in here? Whose truck is that? Where is your father? Can you take that out of the oven? Is the cat inside or out? Does the dog have food? Can you get this down for me? What are you doing in there? Get out of there. Postcard for Gil McElroy. A sketch, an apparatus of mishmash, salutations, systematic checks. My legs were cold, mezzanine. My other body, years apart, geometries of expanding light, myopic, a conceptual poiesis, a game of unfinished phrases, comma, dash, a flourish. Is this? Only poets still write letters. If this should be hand-delivered, by you, to you, posted, but the stars. A child speaks to St. Augustine. Take up, read, a manor, this footpath garners, pints, takes up, gathers, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, but the clouds, a pirated code, two hands English. The grace of Christ, he reasoned, was indispensable to human freedom. Phrasing, wonder, little snowflake, take up, builds in east wind. We fabricate syntax to know more than nothing. Words borrowed from Nelson Ball. Silence, yellow, speech, thaw, spring, clouds, poplars, once, walking, island, brown, rhetoric, poem, debris, words, breathe, matter, air, earth, orbit, Barbara, birds, water, orchard, forgotten, listen, broken, trees, opaque, still, cooler, dust, attention, briefly, scrape, looming, leaves, rolling, wood, smooth, frog, light. Map of the Niagara frontier. Fort George overrun. Thorold, Tweetstorm, 1812, begins the poem, a jargon of muskets, footfalls, soldiers, the village of Niagara burned, Youngstown, border crossings, ride it out, Tecumseh, Brock, the barricade, point to the horizon, defend, red barracks, testimonials, decide, we drive our Surrey car, British, American, First Nations, the enemy is bored, boring, all that remains buried underneath the soil. And finally, Jennifer Kronevet, translated. Each language we wish to release, I drag the letter, counted, syntax is important. Not all sentences can be evaluated. Everything depends upon. Autumn in New York, springtime in Berlin. It does not equal. They say beauty contains a root of space. Can you hear me now? The Chinese chamber echoes, leaving voice to silence. This passage, shaped through words, puncture, soars across great distances. I call you, leap a single bound. Thank you.
No one makes a story. It shudders and thuds, apples along the edge of an orchard, paper across a window. Let the wolf be repetition. Let the girl be accumulation. Let the basket be her face. Her mother had taught her something about time, the looping of thread through a needle, water evaporating from a washed bowl, lining up your moments so they don't resemble you. Each part of the forest edge fractured and fractured again. Carnival flags, lost scissors, a green tendril uncurling. Her cloak smells damp, like copper. In her basket, word for pear or syrup, copper plate, exoskeleton. She had never met her grandmother, which made her hesitate. But her mother had given her a photo. It showed a drying, inward woman, face turned away from the lens. She could just make out brows, a rather large nose, enormous eyes. She had no interest in this branch of her family history. She'd only agreed as a favor to her mother, who seemed recently thinned, brittle, and as a favor to her sister, who was flighty about this sort of thing and altogether safer, remaining in her room with her pencils and origami paper. Her sister, however, had included a gift for the basket, although it was not clear what it was supposed to be, complicated, collapsed, with two protrusions that seemed like wings and another like a snout. Her sister had written on it as well, though her handwriting was spidery and faint, something like, "Be pleasing you," or "We are through you," or "See a sad animal, pick it up." In her basket, rusted binoculars, pouring milk for the cat, a memory of scissors. If the forest is context and the wolf is thread, if the forest is her face and the wolf is a salty sea, if the forest is a flag and also its refusal. The world breaking open like milkweed. Her mother had said it once or many times, asleep on the picnic blanket, late at night by the fire with a cloth in her hand. You dissolve and you coalesce, she said, like a face against a window. Picture time as a blanket, a cherry tree, a ward of the court. Think of time as something undone on the rug, eviscerated or alleviated. The world is full of mammals, her mother said. What will you make of the rest? If it isn't whether she diverged or scattered, backtracked or dissolved, stopped time in handfuls against her chest. If it isn't damaged and alive, carried just underneath the rib cage, squirming and warm, then what is it? She empties her pockets periodically. Dead yellow birds, divining sticks, calligraphy. If the forest were a cabinet, her mother said, you would be a bird stuttering overhead, meaty and keen, half turned away, upending dishes onto a cloth. A woof of transparent hours, a woof of blurry intent, a woof who takes joy on the stairs and callous enjoyment in awkward dinners, a woof with machination and ceremony, a woof of rectitude, a woof of pliers, a woof who won't let you in at night, a woof who will not flee. No one makes a story. It falls along its axis, like beetles or a choking hazard. Doorstep moon, sibling moon, creaturely and prophetic moon, bird call, scratchy, pervasive moon, dedicated to hypothesis moon, murmuring moon, soft-hearted moon, we sweep and sweep again, moon. A girl is a snare, a positive weight, a carousel. There is no refusal here. No one makes a story. It dreams a winter dream like swollen twigs or an abandoned tooth. Like a bird folded near her stomach. Cardboard wolves roaming her skirt front.
Hi everyone, my name is Tom Snarsky, and I want to thank Ben so much for inviting me to participate in this reading series. I'm going to read a couple of poems from my book Reclaim Water, and then I'm going to close with one new poem. So I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of this and to hear everybody else's amazing readings. So without any further ado, the first poem I'm going to read is called Huskow, and I will read it as soon as I find it. That's right here. Huskow. Some people find alcoholism easier to hide in winter. Mistletoe cheeks, magician's tablecloth roads, that warmth. The fever breaks in its spring. Gardens begin to crawl back into being the greenest shared headache of love after money. In my pocket, I carry a single dandelion for my enemies. When I visit, and their plot is completely overgrown, I put an arm around them, my face on fire, and say, hey, something still grew here. The next poem I'm going to read is called Rare Birds of Massachusetts. And this was in Reclaim Water, but also in Some States, which is a little micro chat from Ghost City, which was lovely. Rare Birds of Massachusetts. The farmer's daughter's lover's son lives in Wellfleet, where the northern flickers bless Route 6 with muffled drums each spring. Marconi had a wireless station there, aimed all the way across the Atlantic like a pilgrim in reverse, backing up over history, bad plumbing, or the car over the corpse of Pasolini in that Coil song, or real life. The cartoon red tomato on the Pastene can, fresh off a truck from where else? Canton. Or the New England coffee factory in Malden that gives every sunrise notes of smoke and extremely burnt caramel. The sun was one of the most beautiful people I had ever seen. He made me speak badly and break my lines in obvious ways, on nouns and verbs. I hated feeling so simple, because what is more humiliating than to be reminded the thing you want most in life has only one part, one speaking role? John Wiener's God is like this, his sound always getting stolen or taken away, like the state would take your child if you nailed him to a tree. I desperately wanted not to be nervous, to know my lines and deliver them with care and thoughtful originality on cue, bus service replacing trains from JFK UMass to Quincy Center, because as with radio waves, sometimes a little help is needed to get where one is going. Gloucester, Manchester by the Sea, D.D. Perks, a private beach where white seagulls scream and nothing happens to them. A bookstore, tons and tons of Olson, ice cream places with names like Friendlies and absolutely no love lost between motorists. Inexplicably many trucks, and above them, one white-faced storm petrel making its statistical pilgrimage over the Cape Islands, enough lenses open below to keep the enthusiasts twittering for another year. Not that I blame them. Waiting to see is half the magic of being alive. Frank O'Hara on a Tente du Polish rider with Vincent, i.e. prevailing, conquer, and how many Francis middle names on the South Shore. Or the big wave you knew was coming with the storm surge, wrong coast to surf it, but right one to photograph and submit it to the glossy magazines. Sylvia Plath assiduously sent her work out. Ted's too. Her mom helped, and still the rejections poured in like seawater. Enough to stare at the tides until a body washes up so you can crawl into it and pretend to live. Holding a shell, you can hear the surface of the moon. The gray silence cats know when they're sleeping, and debtors know when the doorbell rings, metaphorically, since there are apps for that now. If you open the door, it's the sun. If you leave it unanswered, it's the thief on either side. Tongue in your ear either way, like a patient identified without a label, song of the toe tag. Venereology being not a death metal record, Masami Akita needed to listen to a lot of death metal records to make. Death like Ovid as change, not death as an end at all. Cool. I'm excited to share with you a couple of poems that are not in Reclaim Water. I said one, but maybe I'll do two if I have time. These are poems that hopefully will be in a book someday, I don't know. The first one I'm going to read is called Tree of Life. One day the sadness will end. Margaret Lanterman. On days when it's looking up, life insurance payout restrictions bad. Think of a little patch of bluebells in the shade. It's dark, yes, now, but the sun is already beginning its morning transit. We'll shift the lattice of shadow and light until those flowers, too, see their moment of warm attention. It will pass, yes, this moment. Do not mistake this or be afraid. The stems will shiver bluely again in evening for a brief time, but then the moon will appear, its low glow giving everything a dim and constant light. I'm going to close with one last poem that is in the neighborhood of this new book thing. It's untitled, so here it is. I was making one last serious attempt at my hands, the palms bruised and caked with dirt after trying to get well water up through our overfine filter, which was like the opposite of an hourglass, the way it contained itself and swirled against gravity. I think the biggest con is thinking there's only one big love in one's life, and like a wave, you either catch it or you don't, and that in the former case, one should be celebrated, and in the latter, pitied or made tragic. What am I doing? I'm dancing like a march idea, like Chopin, for whom dance was one of the languages, like mathematics or love, both flattering instances of Polish culture when you think of our record in war. There is so much anti-trans stuff on social media right now, I am kind of lost. Alfred Tarski writes, "You will not find in semantics any remedy for decayed teeth or illusions of grandeur or class conflicts, nor is semantics a device for establishing that everyone except the speaker and his friends is speaking nonsense." End quote. The deer don't say anything, and the birds are wrong loudly. Jack Spicer, who studied semantics among other things, quote, "They said he was 19. He had been kissed so many times his face was frozen closed," end quote. Like a topological set or a Massachusetts liquor store on Sunday. The aura is like rock bottom of a gift bag meets 10 flowers all dried out because we have no water, though they probably would have taken the dirty water just fine. Boston, you're not home. Jack at the BPL Rare Book Room shuffling a series of circumstances into place that will make possible After Lorca and really all the books in the collected books, which doesn't look back at any of the one-night stands, has a healthy sense of shame that way. Like a shy bullet would rather stay in its casing than visit the brain of a heart. I did have one love, and then I had another, and another. Rainstorms rolling over the mountain and through the river valley. Bright fog burning off for the dew to shine. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ben.
My door is kicked in. It is splintered and sputtering. I stand in its shards, mixed with window glass. It is a structure which resembles a structure only insofar as I still can turn the knob. I turn the knob, and the door does not work. The knob works, the door does not. It is splintered and sputtering. The intruder jumps from my window upon seeing my doorway stance. I take in hand the knob as a consolation weapon. In the glass of his exit window is a note and pile of money. There is so much money. $800,000. A tricky amount of cash to carry when hoping to be live. It is, however, not as large a bill bundle as expected. It is both overwhelming and underwhelming as a feat of agility. Only underwhelming after it is overwhelming, like the beautifully unkempt outside of an abandoned house. The note says only, "Go out and buy the best door." Never once did I question who the intruder had been, or why he had left such a specific and large amount of cash presented so politely in his wake. To the latter, people are fundamentally good, and to the former, he had clearly been a representative entrusted with the delivery of my genius grant. As it does, doubt crept in. Perhaps the intruder himself had been the genius and not I, and if this is to be the case, am I now, in possession of the genius grant, the genius? And if I am now, by transference or genuine award, a genius, then it is clear that I have a duty to fulfill the genius's project. And so I went looking. Consider this pamphlet a set of buyer's notes, a thorough investigation under the orders of acatemizing burglars. The question you must then ask yourself is the nicest door a door one can buy, a door one must take, or a door one must build? The same is worth asking of dreams, which are the true subject of any undertaking. Nothing that follows is a dream unless I say it is so. You have to trust that I trust you to trust me. When I go out of my home through the broken door, I look at it with love. It has been a good door, and even now endeavors to conceal the inside of my home. It is a modest home, a one-story ranch house with a garden in the back. Before I embark on a genius stroll, I have to water my plants. Plants are living things, and a genius can always postpone their genius to tend to the living. I find a body where my gardenias usually sit. I feared this, but did not expect it. I told myself the fear was irrational. The irrational often becomes true when it is written off as such. The body has a ski mask on its face, and severe cuts along its arms. There is too much blood for the body to be a person anymore, but nothing about the leap from my window ought to have made this person a body. It is irrational enough to be real. I water the blood from his body and take him to the cellar that I use to escape tornadoes. When a genius dies, there are usually bagpipes that play. I am chastising myself for my lack of bagpipes when I remember that I do not know for sure that he is a genius. He may be a genius messenger and not a genius at all. I sing him a song. Bodies are dead things, and a genius can always postpone their genius to tend to the dead. When I leave the cellar to search for the very best door, the skies are blue. They do not look like tornado skies, and the genius/genius messenger is dead, but it is also possible that he is alive. I close the cellar doors and look at them. They are rusted, and were I not up to date on my vaccinations, I would risk tetanus every time I use their handles. If I squint, the rust looks like abstract art against the industrial metal of the doors. They have protected me through 3 tornadoes. The doors are very strong and possibly responsible for saving my life as many as 3 times. Beauty is as much a function of utility as utility is a function of beauty. Now that I've written that, I don't know if it's true. Beauty becomes a function of utility only if utility is a metric for what is beautiful. Or utility becomes a function of beauty only if beauty is a means of measuring utility. Utility seems more a form of beauty than beauty is a form of utility. I think that this is the first important lesson I have uncovered as a genius, and if it is true, then the cellar doors are quite good doors so far as best is defined by its relation to aesthetic categories like beauty. Utility is closer to an objective category and bolsters the value of beauty. I am uncomfortable with the tone of this thought. I wish to simplify. I leave the body in the cellar and close the doors and lock them in case of high winds. They are good doors. I decide to walk up and then down my block. It is a residential area which I chose in part for its beauty, so it is possible that the best door is here. It is difficult to walk very quickly or comfortably with $800,000 in my pockets. Also, an amount of cash this large is conspicuous, and I am an anxious person. I make slow progress. It is unclear to me whether I am to use the money to procure a door by bribe or honest purchase, or whether the money is to be used for travel and observational purposes. Since there were no specific guidelines about this given to me by the genius/messenger/intruder, I feel okay about my decision to buy a high-quality red wagon on which to carry what is now $799,900. The wagon maneuvers well. I look carefully at all of my neighbors' doors. In order to prevent further transference of the Genius Grant, I do not use their doors, lest I fall through a window and wind up in a cellar. I just look. Much of life is spent this way. When I spend my life in this manner, I usually do not feel much, but spending it in this way with a wagon holding $799,900, I feel that I am completely open to the beauty of the world. One of my neighbors notices that I am staring at her house with a red wagon full of cash at my side and comes out to say hello. She has a red door, which is not uncommon, but is exceptionally beautiful. The color of a door does not impact its mechanical utility as a general rule, but it does enhance the quality of living insofar as it makes more pleasant one's comings and goings. The criteria for choosing the best door seem extremely vague. We've trod some of this conceptual ground before, but it is worth considering at all angles. This will be a motif of my genius notes. I have so far assumed that best is a subjective measure, kowtowing to my particular aesthetic palette. For example, I value beauty, but believe utility is the core facet thereof, hence the cellar doors appear more perfect to me than they may to another. I apologize that I have said a word like perfect. I have momentarily lost my distance. It will not happen again. What I'm getting around to is that if there could be an objective measure of what is the best door, it would have to include at minimum a degree of functionality. The rest is up for debate. Further down the block there is a felled tree that once was beautiful. Do you see where I'm going? The only possible way to identify what is honestly and truly the best door is to destroy all doors but one. Then there comes the question, which door is the door that is to be preserved? It matters and it doesn't. So long as there is only one functional door in the world, it is the best door. But with my wagon on the sidewalk and my money in my wagon and my genius hanging over it all, I know that I must prod further. What does our society's final door say about us? If it is a bathroom door, for example, then we are a society of embarrassment. If the door to a house, then whose house? And why is it that we value a single person to such a degree? If a church, are we not shutting out the bereft? Besides, I cannot identify the best door by absolute destruction, because superlatives require comparison. Plainly, there are two doors, the door as it is seen and the experience of the door as one moves through. Possibly there are 5 doors, the door as it is seen from the outside, closed. The door as it is seen from the inside, closed. The door as it is seen from the outside, open. The door as it is seen from the inside, open. The door as it is seen from the threshold, open, moving through. Of course, there are a larger number of variations on angle that would constitute a new view of the door, and thus a new door, but these are the fundamentals. The door in reach is distinct from the door far away, in the same way that what is abstract is distinct from what is tangible. Inside, the door is never an abstract concept. Even if it is out of one's sight, the very virtue of inside is constructed by the door's seal. Without the door, one is simply covered, but not inside. What is on my mind is that the order of things from one angle is always distinct from the order of the same things at another angle. Sometimes there is a bird, which isn't an angle at all, but a point of perception. The question which must be answered is how one door interacts with another. It's simple. If, where there are 2 doored structures, one structure's door is open, the remaining structure closes itself off not only to the outside, but to the other structure and its inhabitants. Doors' relation to one another is, at root, one of exclusion. This much is obvious. If, however, where there are 2 doored structures, both with closed doors, then the doors share relation only insofar as they chase the common goal of protecting their inhabitants from the outside world. Thus, in a municipality, when one opens their door very early in the morning, or very late at night, or at a time when the other structures in the vicinity sit still, the door opened feels a great alienation. They take on the vague identity of threat and are, wherever they go, defended against despite having no ill intentions. When one invites another outdoors in the early morning, or in the late evening, or at a time when other structures stand still, one invites another into a state of alienation. This, of course, is complex to parse given the presence of several individuals, such that a group may be rightly said to have formed, no matter how small. The fact remains, where only one door swings open, a tremendous shame is felt. This is why all individuals do not take kindly to having their doors knocked upon at any time of the day, and why, if a door is answered by an individual in any emotional state besides subtle fear, the door knocker ought to be suspicious. The most obvious thing about doors is that they keep things out, but they may also keep things in, and finding oneself in this condition is exponentially more alienating than finding oneself outside of doors. I think of the intruder in my cellar and feel very guilty. I do not hope that he is dead, but I also hope he is spared the intense alienation of capture. I should return. The question is this: what is the moral cost of genius status? Or, more accurately, what is the moral disincentive of retaining cultural capital? In the event that I am a genius only by dint of the intruder remaining trapped in my cellar, then I am a willful kidnapper, every second adding to the agony of another, a more useful if not morally superior human. In the event that I am a genuine genius, but allow the intruder to remain in my cellar, then I am one of 2 things: too cowardly to admit my insecurity, or too insecure to correct my cowardice. Then, of course, there is the question I should be asking. Why am I looking for the best door? Here is one possibility. Doors, in their openings and closings, their lockings and knockings, are the chief facilitators of human morality in all the world. What else if not the device of security, of trap, and of welcome? How could it be that the principal mechanism of division does not rise to this authority? Such as it is, I sit in my red wagon, now cashless, my tired legs stretched out to the sides of its handle.
Hello, my name is Reka Nitrai. I'm writing surreal prose poems and lineated poems. I'm from Bucharest, Romania. My mother tongue is Hungarian. I also speak Romanian and I write in English. I will read one of my surreal poems picked by Ben for Mercurius magazine's Surreal Absurd feature. The poem's title is Landscape with No Hat. I leave the house without an umbrella and notice that it's raining. I grab a pigeon and start wearing it as a hat. A man sheltered under the shop's eaves compliments my look. Let's paint a picture of your hat, he says. And we do. But in the painting, there is no hat or pigeon, only a nude woman giving birth to the moon.
Hi, I'm going to read several poems that are all very, very short from a manuscript currently called The Emptied Man, which is 332 pages of erasures of the novelization of Ang Lee's movie Hulk. So, number 149. His head was something unknown, unknown, vast, unknowable. Number 150. No one had memories. No one breathed. Number 151. He was staring into some inner sense. It was nice, vast, and minimal. Number 152. He noticed some things. A train, unhappiness. He couldn't tell if he wanted to stay. Number 153. He felt alone. There was something. He should have known, should have believed. I was time. Again. You've got this all wrong. Do I? Number 154. There was something in the oldest mind, the simple truth, the mask, started to sob, dared to hope that the start of a second life had been stirred up. Number 155. And yet, number 156. It was reassuring. The world returned to the supernatural. He kept looking skyward. It was isolated. Home. Number 157. Old nightmares rose. No point trying to sleep. Number 158. A distant gesture, a disbelieving look, maybe a worrying house, mind racing, a bicycle. Number 159. He was the door. The door was a moment, a brief time. Number 160. His mind racing, he watched the surface ripple, an abstract before. Number 161. Something he'd known about the world. Transformation was the most natural thing. His skull dancing under the impossible. His exhaustion and fatigue were shadows moving, lurking about. Number 162. You're afraid you'll find us. He fell like a drowning man into the ether. He tried, he called, he looked frozen. Number 163. Monsters lurch from shadows. He was losing all sense of who he was. He echoed through his mind, the sky. Number 164. Lights began to swirl. The monster unblinking, the monster falling to the floor, people screaming all around, the monster like a trapped animal. Number 165. The monster was a mountain, the light of the moon, the hole in the roof. He was a shadow merged into trees. Number 166. He descended, a falling satellite. He was free, and slowly he was filled with the truth. Number 167. He was more confused, more frightened, an open door never closed. Number 168. I want to feel human again. The images in his mind, he couldn't remember. He didn't understand himself. Number 169. He didn't know what recollections happened to him. A too vivid dream, a shattered house, a dream he can't remember. Number 170. His eyes, a door, his eyes widened. Number 171. He was a piece of a moment. Drag that moment far from any leaving. It wasn't a moral, but the belief that the shape of eyes includes wells. Number 172. Everything in a heartbeat, waiting for some little silence. Number 173. Silence, long moments, faces. Somehow, those eyes could, nevertheless, Number 174. He was going to act like language, but his voice was spilling over. He was going to have a problem. Number 175. Away in his head. Is this? Yes. Are you? No. You want to know all about you. Number 176. I live with time. Believe me, I've been through the minutes of life. Thank you.
Creeping through the grass backwards. I can't face it simply to find out. Backwards in the petals and blades again. Behind the other in deep slowness. Backwards, smelling earth again. Slowness. There is sun behind me. Slowness. Going backwards. Slowness is the only way to go. Let it go. Toward the sun so low. Smelling earth again. Go slowly. Slowness. With a walking stick in my hand. To find a way through. There is sun behind me, and husks in my hair. Slowness. There is sun behind me, smelling earth again, and husks in my hair. Hold me close.
Wardrobe malfunctions. When cutting the line, be direct and trace outside the line, always outside the lining, center back first, remove and cut. On the record, for the record, this is a fiendish production, a wardrobe malfunction, a peril, all peril, but a production nonetheless, a body decentered, a subject on the runway, in the operating theater, the chamber, the boudoir, the coroner's office. The subject seeks identity, the next best thing, reproduction of the new, Instagram stories endless, from thirst traps to gun-toting tantrums. A skillful hand notes the neck bone, prominent, passing over with scalpel, careful, ether masked and gauzed, a gross operation in progress. Keep trace lines together with as much exactness possible. An imaginary wholeness drawn, a bone-sung neck and a hint of waist, the navel above the waistline. When taking measurements for the imaginary, autopsy findings include 3 stab wounds measuring 3.8 centimeters. A 200 milliliter blood clot was present in the right thoracic cavity. The dress is not standing, it is valley, and it is down a hallway. The ER nurse is trending on TikTok for self-recording her reaction to a patient's death. Cutting-edge studies in performance and morale. How the dress trembles, how the material trembles into construction. Don't touch me, don't come near me. I'm requesting a patient's advocate. These are the ugly parts of life, swollen with sound-alikes, counterfeits, all creation, and above all else, trembling as pale swarm tall, fabric inhaling, limbs through intricate stitching, exhaustive ordering. For 2 of the wounds the end appeared sharp. There was a small amount of hemorrhage near the liver, stomach, and left kidney. The cause of death was determined fashionable by local media and the House of Good Design. Is the dress social or is it technical? It is an open hive. Is it an open question of technique and light rays and the fusion of eye and moon and the engulfing illumination, the condition of all suffering? All is our somber best. In broad daylight, lines are used for tight-fitting garments. It comes a little past the neckline. Draft the neck of the dress, draft the future draped and slashed. Every dress has a sign surface. Every dress has a core, like any body that desires volume, movement. Police line, do not cross police line. Another body captured by film, gathered, crocheted, dyed. He who floats as woman dress or man suit, moving beyond relationships of movement into woman suits and man dresses, deterritorialized and re-territorialized until satisfyingly worn. A sleeve has a sign surface, a sleeve has a core, like any arm or bicep of veins and ulnar nerves. Now add a line for a shoulder slant with sufficient curve. Now dot the arms, the holes, the bodiless. What remains? Anti-text, anti-language. Cut a line to a new hole, 1/2 inch for the seam, make room for waist, direct and trace, center, back first, remove and cut. Now go back to where we started, always outside the line, always outside the lining. When cutting the line, be direct and trace, center, back first, remove and cut. Turn under a seam at the edge of the facing strip, swing a lamp, swing the focus to the closet where I missed you, moth-eaten. What remains? Larvae of the closet, archive of the entwined. Do lines communicate any sense of movement? A crime of fashion is a thinking, a knot in the stomach, equal to blood and flesh, a wailing woven silk of charmeuses and chiffons, cut into gowns, a trail on the floor under buckle and button, a household investigation held against their will, bodies threaded by silver gilt lines in the dark. I'm afraid of repeating a pattern, the pupil of design, the pupil of the eye, all it is, nothing more, and it is everything. The pupil of the eye is the pupil of design, a sleeve hole, turret, exploding floating ideas of body is the way a pupil can be depatterned until new, until best ad ever the new sleeve conceives of arming while listening to the very last voice the pupil took taking. Taking is what's on the table. Taking is what's always on the table. The table of design. Taking is what any arm does. And almost every arm grows, hands and fingers of desire, when considering a broken bone corset, the fragmented process of death. Taking is what is never announced. So much of this is tiresome fittings. What is a proper length? What does it mean to be done? What does it mean to be a question of any size? What is sewn by my overhand stitch? What do you call a knot in a mirror, a nowhere, a spiral of smoke, where the mind glunges and you slowly begin to matter as you look over your shoulder, your selfie in the mirror, space and hashtags? I want you to know that you're beautiful, or whatever sells data now, whatever writes poems now, writes poems to please, poems for editors who edit with the noblest of intentions. I put on the choker so you can make me look both ways. Before crossing, make room for waste. Go back to the beginning, always outside the line, always outside the lining. When cutting the line, be direct and trace. Remove and cut, now stitch. Every stitch is used to keep the edge from unraveling. Evening wear is about pacing, is about the way bodies hit the floor, like my arms are your arms, and I'm pulling your gun on the second story, and the third story is watching the way your hands disappear into the expanse of my shadow. Everyone is a voyeur. Everyone is a pervert, even the Christians, especially the Christians. I'm sorry about trying to have you. After we finished, I'm sorry about trying to take you apart. Maybe this is the dark warp of all people, how the lines whirl when I'm with you, my ear against all the blood in your veins, the way you feel like the first poem, even if it's the last, to awake in stitches soundless, threading and seeking some greenness or wherever water pours, in some future vision of the whole wide world and all its various triumphs. I tongue for the river of word and hope, but I also taste the beautiful gurney. Under the lights you move me like a motionless Elvis, brought to this circus for the sake of live television. Humans and their every drama, every prescription and every trending crisis, all of it shoved up and down sleeves, and sleeves of sinister plunge. They call that the stream. I take it all in and gag in between, light source and aperture, but also I try to swallow it down. I know that the unity everyone searches for is the unity of domination. You know what they say, proportion and shape over volume.
Three poems for Ben's video project. This first one's called The Real Ghost. Fran thought she saw ghosts everywhere. They were the color of gardenias, a pale blue that was separate from the sky. They were real. They watched her dance in the morning while she made buckwheat pancakes. She'd stop, see a bird disappear into a tree. These ghosts, like most other ghosts, were rejected from heaven. Earth is what happens if you can't get into heaven. We notice this sometimes. Patterns in a wall of rain, for instance. Once Fran saw a ghost materialize as a result of a large moss wing beats. Her best friend, the panther, said, "Who hasn't mistaken a moth for a ghost, or an owl anyway? It's because of the eye spots." Fran had an ice pack resting on her forehead due to a migraine. She thought of her pain as being like Jupiter's great red spot. A Polyphemus moth had just floated down like an avalanche out of the war the linden tree was having with a massive hemlock, both attempting to exorcise demons. These were fall breezes, the kind that flood October with Indian summer. They cover the damp earth, move as if responding to a certain expression in the falling of yellow leaves, the smell of wood smoke in the air, a rake some child left in the middle of the yard in order to go inside and eat dinner, the streetlights flashing on as dusk fades. The moth threw its enormous shadow against the house where Fran watched it dissolve like it was shivering. Blue beams of something burst skyward. The real ghosts were possibly responsible for this. The fine dust on a moth's wings being something that once rubbed off sparkles, then disappears. Fran said, sometimes ghosts float out from behind the garage. It was separate from the house, like a dwelling in the desert or a boathouse. The panther stretched her long, long limbs and yawned. She touched Fran's shoulder and shook it a little, lovingly. The garage was like its own person. Sometimes a real ghost made a home of it, blue with its tiny fake roof made out of warm shingles. Fran mentioned that she was craving bean dip. She knew that there were scientific explanations for the shimmerings she saw, the off-whites ascending up the gray and brown tree trunks that exploded green across the pale blue sky. The real ghosts had once been people. They moved around the landscape, touching buildings, or walked down sidewalks slowly, more slowly than when they'd been people. Okay, this short one is called The Foot. The foot goes inside the shoe and then both walk. Years of this, a fidelity. Someone asked me, you mean like an extra skin? There's a second buffer, a sock. There are buffers between the inner dreaming body and the earth. And then finally, this poem called Whoever We Are. I couldn't help thinking about her dream about fire, the rain thundering on the roof, the blazing up of awareness on a Monday. I picked up a pencil. Ghosts, she said, are burning, running down the highway. I didn't know if I should leave Cedar Rapids or just start meditating. Evenings, a certain blue heron, its eyes filled with emotion, sometimes crossed our backyard. Katie might leave and come back, the sky overhead, an upside-down prairie. We'd been calm before the pandemic, before we'd isolated on either sides of the bed like deer blinded by daylight. Now I go into the convenience store, take out a $10 bill and buy packaging. Whatever it might be, whoever we might be. In her dream, everyone sits down in a cornfield and takes off their fire suits. Nothing left but wind blowing through silhouettes. An imaginary sun spinning above an imaginary horizon, creating imaginary shadows.
No, not nonsense. These are hard and interesting times. Time runs where it wants. If we don't take what we get, we'll get it anyway. We choose to stick at the crossroads of the contradictions. It's art as emergency. Next time I see you, we'll have this to talk about. Looking down. According to the law of contrasts, it won't be a thinking day. You can't have 2 good days in a row. And there's only this one day we are talking about. Today's book's binding is so tight that the text can't open. Anyway, your efforts are interrupted. The rain comes down and meets the evaporation of the snow rising. You look down on the world. It's special and little, extremely special. The other guys snowmobiled for pizza. playing cards. I've got a full cup of coffee day agenda heart. I've got an ambitious, lively, beautiful, fierce friend. I've got full transformational bookcases. I've got poems about lucky bus tickets. I've got woodcuts. I've got enough isolation. But I am not central to this, neither are you. What we have is space, thing, mostly space. In the spaces the air moves sometimes gently. We make 600 pages of mistakes. You need a driver, but I need a drink. The air moves sometimes fiercely. A lot happens. A lot has happened. We were young and moody, and the music hurt our eyes. The music hurt our eyes. We made squares around the easy things. We slept in every room. We read The Billy Goat That Went to Heaven, and Half the Village's Great-Grandfather, and Death of the Village Thief. That was enough. When the teacher punished us by ordering us to put our heads down on our desks, we liked it. We had long winter nights in the house and wild dancing ones in the barn. The story didn't end, but we stopped telling it. We wanted to be great. Now we just want to be good. I want to play cards with Victoria and have steamed milk and a cookie. Crazy Maisie. I draw. A horse, but its head doesn't fit on the page. I'm underwater and don't know which way is up to the air. Stop flailing, I tell myself. I look over the edge. Lab report. So far it's like this. No evidence. Answers don't stay. Questions are more reliable. Is this the flip side? Side 2? What kind of love is it? Witness? Hypness? I miss riding on trains. Life squeezed between non-existences. What else but this? Nothing. I'm so full, I don't feel. I'm a book in a box in a book in a boot. I just took a half pill, half paradox and half contradictions. Join me. I'm not against you. I'm just caught in the middle between one you and another you. I see both of your views and don't have my own. We will discuss it tomorrow. We will begin with the introduction, preface, prologue, alligator, tiger, bunny. First, we will have whiskey and waffles. Once in a long while, the planet taps you on the shoulder and tells you what to do and what to say and what not to. What goes for you goes for me, sometimes double, sometimes half. Do you want me here or not? I leave my door half open, which indicates you're not invited, but welcome. To the intelligent man, standing next to the intelligent rock, we only say morning, because it's not good. Catching myself acting with ulterior motives. Until we are sick, with added difficulties, what Earth's people do, these rules of war. Supersensitive, our anxiety over contradictions, even the inexhaustible. We wish we had, we wish for. Toilets explode, all the shit I would crawl through. The situation, I can learn. Let me. Up or down, let and watch go. A new sleep plan, how many more? I am the quail. Through the cracks of my foundation and down below the water table, I row into the inner sanctums. It's honest as a hospital here, where no one is pretending it's all okay anymore. Today is the day we have to take care of the cat, who keeps falling over sideways. The veterinarian's office might be the true center of the earth. In the sunshine corner of her library, ruby red birds roost on the shelves, damp with morning book dew. A fire rages in her bedroom fireplace, and the windows rattle in a cold rain, and a pet quail coos in a cage on the morning table. A lamentable beauty. You find your mind after losing it. The snow piles thoughts upon thoughts. These are your babies, your newborns in daylight. You dig closer to a recognition of the problems. Silence. All tenses all the time. Long paragraphs. People. Millions of dollars. Mouths and shoes. extreme sensitivity, excessive decorations, effects of entanglement. You see me in the woods and call my name, but it's not me. One cause of art. Someone knocked on your mother's door, and thus you were born. You became conscious of consciousness, and you began drawing it. A circle, a square, a bird on a ladder.
Old Wives' Tales by Daniel Miller, originally published in Whiskey Island. In which the boy swallows the pit of a peach. His flesh becomes soft to the touch, and blonde hairs cover his body. He bruises as time passes, red and purple. He becomes more round, and his bones go soft. His heart becomes wood-like and almond-shaped. Cyanide flows through his seed, and he becomes a passive danger. Friends call him Nectarine, and he's unsure why, or if he should be offended by it. He feels most comfortable hanging loosely from the branch of a tree. In which the girl slides the razor across her calves and thighs and beneath her arms. Her hair, blonde and thin, is gone for a short time. It grows back as brown. It irritates the skin. She slides the razor again, and the brown, irritating hair is gone for a short time. It grows back thicker and darker than before. It covers and curls around her flesh. She slides the razor a third time. She suffocates in the protein filaments when it grows back. In which the boy tugs on himself. He seeks pleasure. The world becomes dimmer as his hand moves quicker. His palms begin to itch. Shapes become less distinct and corners lose their sharpness. Thin, brown hairs push through his palms. His vision becomes cloudy and words become formless. His hairy palms scratch and leave irritated the folds of his fingers. Shadows spread. He climaxes. His vision becomes blackness complete. He places his palms to his eyelids and cannot tell whether or not they are blocking his vision. In which the girl sitting on the tree branch picks and splits an apple, wondering how many children she will have. She counts the seeds in the fruit's middle. The number is too large. Her stomach begins to swell. The first fetus is formed. The third child is birthed moments after splitting the apple. Her pregnancies are followed by other pregnancies. The seeds inside the apple become smaller and deformed. The children become the same way. She grows 100 years in minutes. The children are bright and red and crisp-skinned, falling from the tree onto the grass below. In which the boy feels the sensation in the bridge of his nose, but chooses not to close his eyes. The television program emits a laugh track as he sneezes. He feels each optic nerve snap free at the visual cortex. He expects to hear a pop, but doesn't. He expects to feel pain, but doesn't. He expects to see the television glow, but doesn't. He reaches for a tissue, but the world has gone dark. Two ejected eyeballs stare unblinkingly upward. He hears from another room, Gesundheit, in which the girl crosses her eyes and lifts her nose upward. She bares her teeth and displays her tongue. The boy laughs at the face she makes. She hears the clicking of mechanisms within her skull. She attempts to correct her vision and relax her nose. She fails, and the bridge of her nose remains wrinkled and ugly. Her heart beats faster. Her tongue becomes dry. Shapes become less distinct, and corners lose their sharpness. The boy continues to laugh. Tears flow from her crossed eyes. In which the boy sees his father sip from a mug. He drinks a pot of coffee, and the lengthness of his shins decreases by a centimeter. He drinks another and asks, "It's fair trade, isn't it?" The length of his thighs each decreased by 2 inches. He drinks a third cup, and he no longer has ankles or a midriff. His collarbones touch his hip bones, and his hip bones touch his patellae, and his patellae touch his metatarsals. He could walk on tiptoes beneath coffee tables and not risk hitting his skull, not even when he jumps. He smiles up at his father, towering above him. In which the girl eats 2 cheeseburgers and 2 helpings of potato salad. She jumps from the hot concrete into the deep end. She backstrokes and butterflies. Blood flows toward her stomach in search of nutrients. Her muscles contract in her legs and arms. Pain shoots up her neck. She can no longer tread water. She can no longer move her cramped body. She is paralyzed. She sinks to the pool's bottom. She can only lift and close her eyelids. In which the girl does not chew but swallows the chewing gum. She feels the gum's pink elasticity sinking down and sticking to her body's digestive system. She forgets about the chewing gum. She becomes married. 7 years later, she feels a swelling in her womb. She feels her stomach turn pink and elastic. She becomes rubbery and sweet. Her husband chews on her skin. Labor begins. The bubble expands. She pops.
Hi everyone, I'm Rick. I'm thrilled to be reading with this great group of poets. I'm grateful to Ben for the invitation. I painted my wall yellow just for the occasion so it'll match the shirt I chose to wear. This is my 7th take starting this. I keep making mistakes. So let's see if I get it right this time. And if I make 1 or 2 flubs along the way, I am not redoing it again. Nah, I probably will. I'm going to read from my book, Death Obscura. And the first poem I'm going to read is Heroine in Repose. Heroine as courageous lady, not the drug. I wasn't sure if she kissed me or simply used her lips to push my face away. Yes, the moist warmth was enjoyable. But when my head was forced back over the top of the sofa, the intention grayed. Earlier that day, I planned to quit my job and pursue a career writing romantic novels that would be confused as memoirs. But if I couldn't distinguish between a kiss and a push, what chance do I have of writing romantic novels that would be confused as memoirs? After the kiss, and I prefer to think it was a kiss, she sank back into the pillows and watched me out of the corner of her eye. The next poem, also from Death Obscura, is called The Separation. My father built a wall in the middle of the yard, 5 feet high and 7 feet long, separating nothing there from nothing not there. At night he whispered to the wall. Mother said, what a man whispers in the shadow of his wall is his business alone. Large flat stones, mortar, moonlight, the damp quiet. Father leaned against the wall like a man waiting in an alley. After he died, Mother closed her eyes and placed her ear against the wall. One side of the wall was love. One side of the wall was longing. Later, she donated the wall to a church. One side of the wall became sky. One side of the wall became earth. Mother never said what she heard, or if she heard anything at all. I'm going to read now from my book, I'm No Longer Troubled by the Extravagance, even though I'm slightly troubled that I stuttered at the end of the last line of that poem, but we're going to make believe I didn't do that. This poem is called She Explained Me to Her Mother Using Latinate Words. A love of handcuffs left her, I'm going to start this again. A love of handcuffs led her to a career in law enforcement. A love of handcuffs led me to a career in crime. The day we met, are they too tight? No. She tightened them and smiled, and I smiled too. When I was 7, I tied my legs together. Love of handcuffs wasn't the only love that brought us together. A life-size drawing of a skeleton framed on our wall, pink, ink, red chalk on paper. We both love anatomy. When I was 8, I stole handcuffs and cuffed a cat to a dog. When she was 8, she stole handcuffs and cuffed herself to a fence. She pulled down her pants. Sometimes, just sometimes, I hear the bones when she straddles me and rocks back and forth. If you have 10 fingers, you're normal.
We gave our bones new names. Ulna, man and woman and police car. Humorous, now we soothe. I prepare breakfast on Sundays, anchovies, pancakes, sunflowers beside a coffee cup. Mendeley cuneiform. This is our moon. She wore her uniform at my parole hearing. I was proud when she walked in the room. Badge, lipstick, polished nightstick, etc. Red scars on our wrists like bracelets. Clavicle, oh my darling, tarnish my tongue. And also, from this same book, I'm going to read a poem called The Legerdemain. That's a French word. I think it means sleight of hand. I should know for sure since I wrote the poem, but door-to-door sales is a tradition in my family. My mother brought me from a door-to-door salesman when I was 5 weeks old. I sold everything door-to-door, from silverware to poison, drank hemlock 3 times as a demonstration. Slowly closing the eyes is an effective sales tool. I was 36 when I sold my first tulip, a red emperor, to a man on his way to a funeral, stopped him in his driveway. He held the tulip and sobbed. Selling tulips is selling desire. Other flower salesmen sell cliches. The tulip is a nightmare rehabilitated, closer to a human heart than a rose. Tulips are the ears of the dead. My work has hardened my knuckles. At the end of the day, I sit in my car and watch the sun set in the rearview mirror. The Montaflame is my favorite tulip. The way its orange and red petals cup every dirty secret you've ever told. And now, just the last 2. I'm going to read from, this is my most recent book called Let's Become a Ghost Story. And I'm going to read a poem, Perfecting the Dog Paddle. The summer before we moved to California, my sister took me to the Atlantic, just beyond where rolling water broke into salt spray. It was quiet away from the people playing in the surf. She took my hands off her shoulders. Have you ever had water pumped from your lungs lying on sand? It happens all the time. I tilted my head back to keep my mouth out of the water, sucked enough air so I could remember the blue sky, the sun, the details of being alive as I sank. Throat tightened, struggled, kicked my legs, and continued the panic descent until she grabbed my hair and pulled me, as older sisters do, to the surface. Try again, she said, pushing me under once more. One day I won't be here. And my last poem is going to be, where is this? I lost my place mark. Let's Become a Ghost Story, the title poem from this book. Let's become a ghost story. Let's scare each other. It's what lovers do. We owe each other that much, so why not? We've done worse. Together, we're under construction. This has nothing to do with hammers and nails. Any part of our bodies can be a soldering iron. Separate, we're the punchline to each other's joke. The other night, I saw a woman run naked from the house across the street. I wanted her to be you, fearless, warm flesh streaming, glowing in a cold mist. You can be suffering, and I can be sugar, or you can be sugar and I'll be suffering. It's up to you. The more we collaborate, the more frightening we can be. Let's practice naked under the white sheets. Let's take turns pretending to be the wind, slip out through the open window. Let's steal things. You steal the daffodils from the graveyard. I'll steal the plastic rabbit from the neighbor's yard and finally be good at something. That's the scary part. Are you frightened yet? It's an emotion that must be constantly relearned, like biting your tongue or mine. Thank you so much. I'm sure you'll enjoy the rest of the reading. Bye.
Hi, I'm Kai. I'm gonna read 4 poems. First one is from my first book called Sunday. Yeah, the poem is called Rapture. Rapture. Bird says to lime twig, I feel our touching like a hot streak. which standpoint, insistently tropical, left a tiny furs on my mind to things. Said the lime twig, I want to go in a new door, even if it leads to the same building as the others. Okay. Then I'm going to read one poem from this pamphlet that came out last year with Earthbound Poetry Series, Some Theses on Fear. I hold out to my mother in reverence, so engender a thought from you. Does one back slowly away from one's frightening thoughts? Canister, how is one led to fear? Held there. Perfect proxy equals true. I have an epistemically weak propositional attitude. It may be here or here it is, disrupting the health of false alarm or harmony, for real. There goes Dolly, confidently non-coincident with her surface. Someone was here to break apart the information as the world settles into its incursion, not surrounded by me itself, whose what is now that. She commutes the perceived situation to a faint noise and therefore exists. Cheese people with surveillance vistas keep the dead white rose in a water jar, and the 1,000 botryoidal fauna called fear and dispensations. Who shook me? The projector's plain eye. Which ghost will pin its picture to the wall? There is cloud. This spells there itself or. We had good used feelings in each other's arms. In autumn we saw Solaris alone. Slickly she says such acceptable things like, we were all men possessed by vegetables. We lived in the pool. And then I'm gonna read two new poems. Two new poems. The first one is called Spring Poem / Fantasy is precisely what reality can be confused with. If I can find it. Yeah, okay. Spring Poem. Spring Poem. Fantasy is precisely what reality can be confused with. The harmful nitwits of Godard. Host, guest, and me. Categories whose practice is being born a snowdrop all the time. Freshet breeze the face of April, June, its ramifying aspect. Mineral and incipient tooth has January. The daffodil too about to have a mind. The brush following its emergence of the brush in reality, by hair. It resonated all the way here by a possible means. The long wire means of possible means. The goal of the winter mind of heaven and earth. Still melon, still loud enough, but a mind with a point. Screaming at birds, enjoy lying down, the way a certain stick in the heart responds to fairness. Fish food coming down to the angels, going up. Okay, I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
I'm Jeff Alessandrelli, and this is a poem called Insert Here. Porn has a lot of sugar in it, but the taste can still be bittersweet. Watching human entanglements so freighted and immaculate that the computer screen incinerates in front of you. No melts, no explodes, no stays steady, stable, stuck in place by desire's unmoored earnestness, its ever insistence. On screen, a naked woman is smoking a cigar on a guillotine platform. Next to her are two guillotines with two naked men inside, 4 feet separately stalked, their bodies prone, their necks pertly balanced below the blade. The men's faces are hidden, no struggle or anguish is shown. Silence, motionlessness. After an establishing pause, the woman saunters towards the men, her face a solemn mask. With each heavy step of her Doc Martens, she arrives at a foregone conclusion that the viewer yet anticipates eagerly, an anticipation focused and sustained. Insert line here about the difference between Power's eroticism and the tangibility of lust, its vaunted spurge of ascent. Insert line paraphrasing Susan Sontag on the powerfully impotent cultural expectations of sex. Line quoting Michel Foucault's The Use of Pleasure, quoting Monica Mayhem's Absolute Mayhem, Secret Confessions of a Porn Star, A Cautionary Tale. Steady camera angles and probing compressed lighting. Some action, action, action. And then later the screen is quiet, as is the viewer's single inert body. Both the woman and the men exist now in memory alone. And so, for that same viewer, the motion seen is the motion sown. Still awash in the computer's light, tenderness is a choice, as is emptiness, it's dim. Rebecca, it's not like it's my life, not at all. What satisfies a fully present moment are the moments afterwards. And this is from a book called And Yet, which is like a literary collage that's coming out next year that blends fiction, nonfiction, and cultural criticism. And this is the start of it. And yet. I don't fear sex or love, not exactly. Rather, I fear not truly understanding the title of Jane Addiction's classic 1988 album, Nothing Shocking, where Perry Farrell's reedy, distinctive yelp on songs like Jane Says and Mountain Song euphoniously marries itself to Dave Navarro's nimble guitar lines, to Eric Avery's syncopated slap bass and Stephen Perkins's steady percussion, of not understanding Nothing Shocking album cover, a not shocking sculpture of nude female conjoined twins, large breasts prevalent on an oversized rocking chair with their heads engulfed in billowing flame. Laden with tributaries, I fear having or choosing to exist in the glibness of those previous sentences because of what I might lack. On the occasions when someone has sent me a nude pic, I've studied and studied, then sent it right back to them. Their response has told me far more than their physical nakedness has. In a world where one's erotic capital increasingly matters as much as one's economic capital, prudery is shocking, no matter if one is young or old. Sexual shyness, reticence, priggish, puritanism, some unfleeting exclusiveness to one's own endless self. But where, in Western culture at least, sex is everywhere, ubiquitous, screaming, scrolling, swipeable, such unthinkable states and emotions are increasingly prevalent. Compared to the baby boomer generation and Generation X, millennials and Generation Z become sexually active later in life and sleep with fewer people. Dating and marriage occurs later in their lives, as does childbirth. Sexual prolificity is less important than personal identity, comfort, and security. What I want is myself, my freely sustained, fully possible self. And the path to such knowledge dwindles the more I fuck you, and you, and you, and you. I'm selfish, in other words, but only in relation to my estimation of what everyone else lacks. Is it a privilege to write about what one fears most? To freely open oneself up to all attendant interior apprehensions and plug ahead anyway? Rapper Young Thug on his sexual inclinations with fiancée Jericho Carly. We wasn't doing it on like, no, it's too early to have sex shit, he explains. I don't care for sex that much. I've never actually had sex with her. Never, ever. A first time doing grown stuff, she did it. She pulled me into the room and was like, come here. Carly stated that initially she thought he was weird for not having sex, but went on to explain why that made her more attracted to Thugga. To be fair, Young Thug, born August 16th, 1991, has 6 children by 4 different women, and in 2018 announced a new name change to Sex. And yet. She was a brain researcher and an authority on the scientific basis of love. He too was a neuroscientist, but with an expertise in loneliness. She was in her mid-30s, he in his late 50s. Both were wedded to careers in separate hemispheres until they happened to be seated beside each other serendipitously at dinner on the last night of a neuroscience research symposium in Shanghai. So begins the New York Times obituary for John Carpaccio, co-author of the seminal text, Loneliness, Human Nature, and the Need for Social Connections. The piece ends with a quote from the widowed Dr. Stephanie Carpaccio. I did not know what true love was until I met my husband. John taught me what true love means, and now, thanks to my husband, I am on the verge of knowing what true eternal love is. Is it a curse, such a privilege? True eternal love, a type of love that I can only assume becomes internal by dint of a passion, physical, emotional, spiritual, that refuses all manners of temporal cynicism. Still, there's that verge to consider. What happens if Dr. Carpaccio never makes it around the bend, instead capitulating to mere earthly love, a love that 25 years from now, her husband in the ground for 25 years, suddenly falters? What if she meets the second love of her life tomorrow and does not have the wherewithal to recognize it? The closer I come to you in reality, the more does the key sing in the door of the unknown room. There is a silk ladder unrolled over the ivy. There is hopeless fusion of your presence and your absence. I have found the secret of loving you, always for the first time. From his poem, Always for the First Time, these are the surrealist poet Andre Breton's thoughts regarding love in this life and the next. By wholly loving, Breton asserts, we lose what any definition of love might be. Innocence piled upon innocence takes its place. Eternally true. Is the ultimate privilege of all being able to choose what one fears most. A noted misogynist, the problem of woman, he wrote in 1929, is the most marvelous and disturbing problem in all the world. Andre Breton was married 3 times. Although artistically talented in their own rights, each of his wives, Simone Colinet, Jacqueline Lamba, and Elisa Bonhoff, was habitually referred to as Breton's wife, or simply her. Prudence is the ability to govern and discipline oneself via the use of calibrated reason. To be prudent is to be marked by wisdom and judiciousness. Thus, prudery, by extension, should be a laudable concept, some much commended character trait entailing tact and decorum. I thought I'd try and redefine the word in order to accommodate my own reservations about it. But then I realized. So that's from the start of my book, And Yet, which is coming out next year. And my name's Jeff Alessandrelli. Thanks.
Rain, after Lucretius. Death is nothing to us and matters not a road, since the soul is held to be like rain. Just as in times past we had no sensation and were not troubled, when we were the rain coming from all sides around the family car. And we on impact shook hard with tumult, trembled and quivered around dad's jokes and mother's breezy compromises. And no one knew which of us would win empire and rule over family. Just so, when we no longer are, when brother is gone from family, those parts whose home is our being. Nothing can happen, be sure of it, nothing can happen to us then, for then we shall not be, and nothing can make us feel. Not if brother dissolves into rain, and from rain to puddle, and puddle to small rivulets which stream into the drain and darkness. Then this water, here where I kayak, here in this river, this lake, here under this flock of wintering and unmovable geese, here on its way to the rising salt sea.
The invention of song. My father told me he was driving my tongue to the farm. He put it in the back seat and prepared to leave. He reassured the tongue. He said there would be long fields and long days, golden sunlight and tasty table scraps. It could say whatever it wanted on the farm. I stood on the driveway, stomped my feet and gestured with my hands and empty mouth. That night, when he returned, my father said the tongue was happy. On the way home, he said, He saw the tongue on the horizon as the sun went down, and it was howling, howling at the new moon. One day I would learn to spell scissors, leave my father with a useless stump. I would learn to sing. Sonnet. This is a folk tale that did or didn't happen. Eyeshadow and Cheese Whiz in a wrestling match. Cheese Whiz is a brand of processed cheese sauce or spread produced by Kraft Foods. It was developed by a team led by food scientist Edwin Traceman, 1915 to 2007, and first sold in 1952. Today I realized that I'm not losing my hair, but my head is becoming smaller. Eventually there won't be enough room for my hair, and it will leave me seeking new ground on which to grow. Albert Camus writes that Sisyphus put eyeshadow on his rock. Glamour writes that smoky eyes are supposed to be the rebellious rock and roll alternative to meticulously clean girl makeup. There's a delicate balance to be struck between looking sexily disheveled and just plain, what the fuck? What the fuck, Sisyphus? Let's talk about birds. Thrushes are plump, soft plumage, small to medium-sized birds. The smallest thrush may be the short wings, which have ambiguous alliances with both thrushes and old world flycatchers. Duchess of Queensberry rules is where a wrestler challenges another wrestler to a match to be contested under some kind of rules without going into any detail, then making up rules in their favor as the match progresses and feeding them to the ring announcer. My beloved is like summer in this respect. Their beauty will not last forever. Two Jews are waiting for a train, a wizened old guy and a nearly beardless youth. The young man asks the old guy for the time, but the old guy ignores him. The young man persists. Eventually, he says, "Look, Zadie, why won't you answer me? I'm just asking for the time." "Oi," the Altakaka sighs, "it's like this. If I tell you the time, we'll start to talk. Then the train will come and maybe you'll sit beside me. Maybe we'll begin to talk, start kibitzing, and maybe I'll invite you for Shabbos. So then you'll meet my daughter. Shayna Maidla is she, and the doctor. And maybe you'll each take a shine to each other. Maybe you'll even get married. So I ask you, why would I want a son-in-law who can't even afford a watch?" "Listen," the young guy says, "what does it matter? You do know the train goes to Treblinka." You were sitting on the lost beaches of the English language, waiting for the sun to set. Waves were lapping at your feet like small blue dogs without spines. And when you ran your fingers through their foamy hair, they made small barks the shape of conch shells. I appreciate what you did for me. I appreciate what you did for my family. I even appreciate what you did for yourself. Now I have this sadness as the sun sets, turning the blue dogs to gold. I have this sadness that tells me you sitting on the wet sand, your skirts like the sails of a small ship sailing nowhere. That tells me that soon we'll be together on that small ship, and the animals, gathered in pairs, will be reading us our life story and guiding us to the life rafts below.